not in a suitable condition for immediate sale. The fact that the asset is repaired after the year end is a non-adjusting event that simply does not give additional information about year end conditions. Therefore, it is not held for sale. In other words, it will be normal PPE with a full year depreciation. It will be a normal property, plant and equipment, a normal non-current asset with a full year's depreciation. Good. So that would appear to deal with the idea of an asset being held for sale. But that's only half the standard. The asset being held for sale relates to the concept of assets on the balance sheet. But I want to talk to you again about IFRS 5, but in the context of a discontinued operation. Let's imagine this year's turnover is 100. Let's imagine this year's profit is 10. As an investor, I'm partly interested in knowing what we've done this year, but I'm also interested in extrapolation and prediction. And maybe this year we have sold. Maybe this year we have discontinued an operation which represents 20 of the turnover and 2 of the profit. For me, it would be much better if we represented the turnover to be 80. Look, turnover is 100. Yeah, turnover is 100. 80 from my continuing operations and 20 that has been discontinued. So I would rather show turnover of 80 so that if we show a 10% growth next year and turnover is 88, then people are going to be happy and that's realistic. But if you report turnover of 100 and next year turnover is 88, people are going to say, what's going on? Because if our 100 includes discontinued operations, we should arguably strip it out. So I would only want my turnover to be 80, my cost of sales to be 80%, my interest to be 80%, my tax to be 80%, my profit from continuing operations to be 8, and then I can bring in my profit from discontinued operations, together with any profit loss on the disposal. I will represent the results of my discontinued operations in one line at the bottom, so that my data in the P&L, turnover, expenses, interest, they can be extrapolated into the future, because that's what investors want. So there's 2 plays to this. Yeah? How do we define a discontinued operation? We'll look at that in a minute. But the consequences of held for sale current assets, cease depreciation, write down, the consequences of discontinued operation is all about being relevant, one line. Strip it out, strip it out, strip it out, strip it out. Show the results of the discontinued operation in one line. Yeah, that would be their operating results, and that would be the profit or loss on the disposal. So discontinued operation. Yeah, discontinued operations. We would strip out the results on a line-by-line basis. We would include in the P&L those results in one line. Including any profit or loss on disposal. So discontinued operations, we would strip out the results on a line-by-line basis. We would include in the profit and loss account those results in one line, profit or loss from discontinued operations. That is what we would do. That would be the appropriate thing to do. That would be the appropriate thing to do. Right, we now have a definition. Let's have a look at that definition. So let me remind you, or let me tell you of that definition. So let's have a definition of a discontinued operation. It is a component of the business. It is a component of the business that has been either disposed of or held for sale. Sometimes most of the time, a discontinued operation has been discontinued, so that you've actually sold the business in September. You've actually sold the business in July. So it is actually a discontinued operation. But it is possible to have a discontinued operation which has not yet been discontinued, so it's a discontinuing operation because it is held for sale. We have a commitment to sell the business, there's an active plan to sell the business is in a suitable condition for immediate sale, reasonable price, highly probable within 12 months. But if we are going to have it as a discontinued operation, it must represent the closure of something. I sort of go back to segmental reporting. Because one way of thinking about a component is to think about it as a sub or as a segment. I've lost a little bit of weight. Not a lot, but I've lost a little bit of weight. A little bit of weight here, a little bit of weight here, a little bit of weight there. I haven't discontinued anything. Yeah? I'm 10% less than I was. But it's just all over. If I had amputated my arm, I would have discontinued my arm. And I would therefore be a discontinued operation. If FTMS sells Hong Kong, we have withdrawn from Hong Kong, that's a discontinued operation because that's a separate geographical region. Yeah? Or if FTMS ceases to do any ACCA courses, then you could argue that ACCA is different from professional courses, degrees, different from the other activities. So you would say, that's a discontinued operation. To be discontinued, you've got to close something down entirely. You've got to close a country down entirely. Or you've got to close a product range down entirely. You can't just say, we're trimming here, we're trimming here, we're trimming here, and we're trimming here. There has to be surgery where something specific goes. That's a discontinued operation. So it's that's a discontinued operation. So a component of the business either being disposed of or sold and represents a separate major line of business and represents a separate major line of business and represents a separate major line of business or geographical area So it's a separate major line of business or a separate major line of business or geographical area. Now, it can be part of a single coordinated plan. It can be part of a single coordinated plan. It can be part of a single coordinated plan. Or it can be a sub exclusively acquired for resale. It can be a sub exclusively acquired for resale. And I think both of those need explaining. You see, technically, you could have 20 hotels in Malaysia. And what you are trying to do is to close down your hotel business in Malaysia. That would be a discontinued operation because although we still got hotels in the rest of the world, we've no longer got hotels in Malaysia. Now you may have sold 16 of the hotels and 4 have yet to be sold, but it's a single coordinated plan to get rid of the business in Malaysia. Or it may be a subsidiary that you have exclusively acquired with a view to resale. Now that's a very strange expression. But you might buy a holding company with 10 subsidiaries, but you only want 9 of them. So you buy the holding company and you buy the job lot, and there's one of those businesses that you never ever want to physically use. And therefore, you didn't consolidate it this year, so you don't want to consolidate it next year. So, a discontinued operation. It's strange, it doesn't seem to be examined that much, and yet, you know, it is, I think, a significant issue. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity this afternoon of addressing it. Can you turn to page 137, please? One of the things included in my notes are articles by other people. Because your examiner points out that you shouldn't exclusively look to rely on one voice, on one set of material. So the examiner himself encourages you to effectively read around. Now, in order to help you in that process, included in the note and included in the revision material, you will find articles that have been written by other people. And one very good author is Graham Holt. And there's quite a good track record of articles that I recommend that people read, with those articles then subsequently featuring in some way, shape or form in the exam. Now, there's never an exact correlation. You know, the examiner's already written, what are you doing the exam in June? So June, September, December, March. Yeah, I mean, the next 4 exams are signed, sealed, delivered. So that if there's a bunch of heart attacks or something, yeah, the whole process still continues. It's not like the June exam is still being written. It's being written, it's printed, it's published. Yeah, the same with the September exam, the same with the December exam as well, and March is almost there. So it's sometimes very difficult to make a specific correlation between a specific article and a specific exam. But if you look back, yeah, you will find that sometimes things are examined and they're not in the BPP kit, and they're not in the Kaplan kit. But what they are is out there on the internet. They're out there as a current issue. And so it is, I think, useful for you to be exposed to things which have not yet been examined, exposed to articles. And we'll touch on a couple of these things on the revision phase. We'll touch on a couple of these things on the revision phase. We'll touch on a couple of these things on the revision phase. Now, today's Monday. You can see here that the video recording has been taking place today. This will be uploaded on YouTube?
Yes.
Do they get told how to find it on YouTube, or do they have to do searches, or how would that work?
I think it should be uploaded on the web page.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Check with customer services, but effectively, I'm sure a search of FTMS, Clendon and whatever will get it there. It's not going to be posted up tonight, is it? I don't know. Why am I talking to you? Because you're here and you've experienced it. But what I'm saying is the lectures on Friday. So we have a lecture on Friday afternoon at 2. That's what I've been told. And we have a lecture on Saturday and Sunday, which will deal with the revision phase. Now, those lectures will be slightly different. My hope is that I will do a little bit less talking, and my hope is that you will do a little bit more work. Alright? So sometimes we'll try and do a question to time, sometimes we'll do a question in answer plan form, sometimes if you talk to me, we can end up doing a bit of reteaching. Yeah? And there will be points in most questions which we haven't specifically talked about. The nature of an exam question is always interesting, is always a little bit integrated. So there's always going to be something that we can pull out of the question which we haven't necessarily previously seen or understood. But that's the nature of the beast. That's how, and we're going to have to cope with that and deal with that in the exam. And that's some of the strategies that I will be giving you, yeah, when we come on revision. And you'll see that that's been partly reflected in my teaching approach. On behalf of FTMS, I would like to apologise for the changes in the timetables that have occurred due to circumstances outside of your control and me being ill and whatever. But I'm glad I'm here. I've had an enjoyable 3 days, and I look forward to seeing you again on Friday. Yeah, if you can, remember, please bring the revision material that you have been issued with. Yeah, I'm not going to set you any homework, but if you do have any time, look at the group account stuff, because that's the rustiest stuff, and that's the stuff at the beginning of the material. So I do look forward to seeing you on Friday if I can. If I don't see you in person, you again on that, but it would be better.